So overall, we see this all over the place, and websites of especially SaaS companies have just gotten progressively worse over the last 6 months than they even were before.
Hi everyone, it's our next episode of SaaS and Tech Interviews, and our guest today is Anthony Pierri, who is a partner in Fletch PMM. Hi Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Great to be here with you.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure for me to have you. Well, today we're going to talk about how SaaS companies fail with their website messages. But before we go into that, could you tell me a couple of words about yourself, about your company, what you're doing, and whom you're serving?
Yep, exactly. I'm happy to do it. Me and my partner, Robert, we run Fletch PMM, which is a 2-person consultancy. We kind of like to say that we're consultants, but we also help you actually do the work. So we work mainly with early stage startups that are struggling with positioning and messaging challenges, usually as it relates to their early go-to-market efforts. And so we come in, help them clarify what their positioning should be and how to message it. And then specifically, we help them translate that into website pages, usually one of the 2 different types, either the homepage we help them redo, or we help them create landing pages for specific segments that they're targeting.
Cool. Well, you work with many SaaS companies, with many SaaS startups, and it's written on your website that SaaS companies' homepages are garbage. So why is it so? What is the most common mistakes that SaaS companies do with their messaging on website?
Yep, great question. There's a lot of different reasons why this is, but the most common one we see now is actually that in this kind of macroeconomic environment where a lot of companies are tightening their belts and they're not buying SaaS tools maybe at the same level they were a couple of years ago. So what's happening is that a lot of companies are saying, in our deal cycles, we keep getting blocked by the chief financial officer or the finance department. They keep asking us, what's the ROI? What's the ROI on this? And so in a effort to try to lead with the ROI, they replace all of their product marketing, which was on the website at one point, and they replace it with all these outcome ROI benefits language. So they lead with, we're going to boost your revenue. And then every single line is, we're going to increase your deals. We're going to, decrease your sales cycle, all these things that are outcomes. And what it leaves people when they go on the website is, I don't even know what you do. And so when they don't know what they do, what the product is, how it works, they don't even believe any of the outcomes. So as a result, you have a page that doesn't tell you anything about the product, and it doesn't actually convince you of any of the ROI things they're trying to convince you. So overall, we see this all over the place, and websites of especially SaaS companies have just gotten progressively worse over the last 6 months than they even were before.
Okay. Well, worse, you say. That's a tendency.
Yeah, it's
good
even
for
worse
you,
than they
you'll
were.
get more clients.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So what are the main messaging elements that every SaaS company have to have on their website? I know that it might be not just one. So could you maybe give briefly a structure that you would recommend, something that must be there?
Yes, absolutely. So our model boils it down to 6 different aspects, and there's sub aspects of each of these, but essentially at a high level, they are, who are you talking to, which can be a mix of maybe it's a specific role. We're writing for marketing managers. Maybe it's a team. We're writing for marketing teams. It could be for a type of company. We're writing for small businesses. Maybe it's an industry, which would be something like we're writing for data mining companies or something like that. Or it could be, in lieu of either of those, it could be a shared context by lots of different groups, but it's so specific that you would immediately see yourself in this. So we see this with like a company like Calendly, where the who of Calendly for a while was anybody who's trying to book meetings over email, and they're sending basically time slots. Can you meet at 6, 7, or 8 on this day? And they say, no, how about that? And they're going back and forth. So their product is for that group of people. And that might consist of companies. It could consist of individual freelancers. It could be friends, but they all are combined by this context. So that first element is you need a who that you're actually speaking to with the message. And then there's loosely 5 other elements. You have a who, you have a problem. So usually if they're in some specific context today, without your product in the mix, it's leading to issues. It's leading to problems that create the opening for your product to come into play. So that's kind of the market side. It's like the who plus the problem. And then on the product side, when you talk about product market fit, on the product side, there's 4 elements where you essentially have a product category. What shelf does your product even live on? What do people compare it to? And then there's capabilities, features, and benefits. And the way that these 3 break apart is a capability is something that I can do with your product using some of your features. So in Slack, I can communicate with my team members. That's the capability. With the feature, using direct messages and public channels.
Right.
That's the feature. The benefit is really what's the outcome of using that product capability. And the benefit might be, so it's faster, to get things back and forth than it would be with an email. Or a benefit could be, it's less frustrating or something like that. It's usually like a state change, increasing something good, decreasing something bad. So on a powerful page, you should find all 6 of those elements: a who, the problem that they have, and then the product category your product's in, the capabilities of what I can do with it, the features that make those capabilities possible, and the outcomes, the benefits, the ROI, whatever that might be, of using those product capabilities.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. I do really recommend for those who would like to learn more about those elements. I've heard that lately you had a webinar where you spent almost more than an hour, right, talking about those elements. So I'm gonna attach the link to this episode. Please go listen, watch, and I found it very useful for me personally. So thank you. Another thing is that when we're talking about the messaging, obviously as a customers, we are currently overloaded with information, like really overloaded. Me personally, in the morning while I'm still in the bed, I haven't woke up before my first coffee or tea in the morning. I already read like 5 or 6 articles on news. I've got 20 messages on my Slack, my working Slack, on my personal messengers. I've got maybe 20 or 30 Instagram feed posts, etc. So obviously it's so difficult for content writers to stand out, to catch an attention. Even it is getting more difficult when I read more and more articles about which words you should avoid, what are forbidden words for website messaging, such as obviously we cannot talk about cutting edge tools recently or state of art. Like those adjectives are absolutely forbidden now. And I'm wondering, what is your take on that? Is it really forbidden? Should we really avoid, as a marketers, look for alternatives? Or when it's actually allowed to use those cringy zombie words that are not welcomed, let's say, anymore? So what is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally your messaging, to make it as relevant as possible, you obviously want to do the least amount of fluff possible, a least amount of like words that you can just gloss over. And the big ones that we see are like when people say we're all in one. That's on every SaaS website right now. Everyone also is saying we're your single source of truth. That's on every single website. So there's many of these words that like kind of just make you glaze over it. But for us, honestly, we like when it goes back to there's so much information. A lot of times that's what makes good messaging for these different products is less about the individual word choice and more anchoring to what the end user or the customer or visitor is doing today. So for example, we like to use the example of like the search engine DuckDuckGo. So when DuckDuckGo enters the scene, search engines are a very mature product category. Everyone knows what they are. Everyone is already using one. And so the moment that they enter the scene, they need to answer the question, well, why would I ever consider switching from Google? Why would I switch from Bing or whatever it is? And so for them, they need to lead the messaging with, why are we different than the existing product category? And they did it really well by saying, well, we're just like Google, but we don't steal any of your data. We don't track you. We preserve your privacy. So they're able to make that messaging stand out among the sea of different companies by picking a very specific angle that matters to a certain group of users. And a lot of times, if you're entering with a startup especially, you might not be in a mature product category. You might be doing something that's never been done before. And so rather than anchoring to these non-existent competitors, you anchor to the current way that people are doing things. So you would say, well, you know how you specifically handle this unique issue. Maybe you have an intern doing it, or you have spreadsheets or whatever it is. We are actually a better way that you do this process. So we refer to those two different things as competitive differentiation, which is where you compare yourself to competitors, and contextual differentiation, which is where you're comparing yourself to the current context, how people are doing things today. And so anchoring on either of those, your messaging on one of those two, will make it stand out way more than just like, don't use these words or use these words, or right, like long sentences, short sentences. It's more being like, I'm going to meet my customers or potential customers where they are and really speak their language and create this customer-centric messaging that really resonates from the moment that they read it.
Right. And obviously you don't have to just stand out with your words. It's your service itself has to be,
different.
Has to be different, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you. Let's talk about AI, especially in your field. But obviously AI can create, can curate, can personalize messaging. What is your take on that? Are you threatened, especially with with your company and what you're doing, or you have some plans on how you can find a new application?
Yeah. Great question. So AI, in our sense, like what we've seen, the first use cases that most people, especially in B2B SaaS, jump to was content creation at scale. We're going to be able to write 1 million blogs, 1 million programmatic SEO, web pages, and we're going to be able to write landing pages and all that stuff. So everyone jumped to that use case. But the problem is with AI, these pages, whatever the content is really only as good as the prompt you give it. And so when people say generate a landing page, these are people who can't even write landing pages themselves because they don't know which things they should highlight. So if they say write a landing page for my company, usually they're going to run into the question of, all right, well, I only have so many sections on the page. What features should I highlight? I can't talk about every feature. I can't talk about every outcome. I have multiple customer types. I have multiple different use cases. Sometimes I even have multiple different products. How do I represent all these things in a clear, cohesive way? So they can't even do that when they're doing it manually. And so when they tell an AI to do it, the AI is going to, at best, be a little bit worse probably than they would do it if they were doing manually. So if they can't even do it, the AI doing a little worse is not really a great substitute. So we see it more as like, even me and my partner will use AI in our work where we've already figured out with our framework which sections should exist on a homepage based on the company's go-to-market strategy, the product category maturity, the market maturity, how aware of the solution and the problem are they, all these different factors, right? Where you're at in the maturity of the company, how many people you have to even service these different groups, like all these different factors that we take in to determine which sections we even include in a page, what do we lead with, all that stuff. And AI becomes helpful as we're like, okay, we know what message we want to give, and we're struggling to find the right way to word it. And so we might write the first sentence and say, it doesn't feel quite right. And you feed the sentence into ChatGPT and you say, give me 10 different variations of the sentence. And bam, now we have actually usable stuff. So I always see AI more as a enhancing tool rather than a replacement to the strategic piece. Because, and the other thing is the way these large language models work is they're just pulling from all the kind of like best practices and things that are out there that are regularly posted. And our biggest POV is that most of the best practices are not very good, especially around this, right? And that's why all these websites are so bad in the first place. So you're likely, by using a large language model, outsourcing your product marketing to them, they're likely just going to perpetuate all the bad habits that everyone is doing because they're kind of taking the average of what most people are doing anyways.
Yeah. So you don't have to worry about your job.
Not yet, no. I mean, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, I'll be coming back and it's getting really rough. AI keeps stealing clients from us, but no, at this point, it feels a giant leap in technology would have to happen before that would really be a threat.
Got it. Speaking about in 5 years or in 10 years in future, basing on your observations, could you share maybe some sort of predictions or trend that you expect to see in 2024. It can be in your field. It can be generally something that you observe on the market.
Yeah, a couple things. Like we've seen, there's kind of these cycles with SaaS companies where, in general, 95% of the SaaS companies we work with fall into one of two categories. We are taking existing point solutions, bundling them together into a platform, and the value prop is almost always, you have to jump between these 5 tools and it's annoying. We've basically taken the functionality and created a platform. So that's like the bundling strategy. Then the unbundling strategy is you're using a big platform that does these 5 things really poorly. We do one of those things 10 times better than they do their one piece of it. So add us onto the platform. And that's like the unbundling strategy. And we're kind of in a bundling cycle because they kind of alternate. Because what happens is when you bundle all the products together, usually you do them all very poorly. And then when people unbundle them, they do them all well, but they don't integrate. So it's just a cycle like this. So we're kind of, in my opinion, we're on the bundling arc. Almost all the startups we talked with are bundling currently. So I think by the time next year, the year following, we'll probably revert to an unbundling as all of these platforms become terrible again, and we'll probably want to unbundle them. So that's like one prediction probably that I'd probably put money on that'll happen. And I think that the companies that are really going to succeed are the ones that are not just bundling and unbundling. They're truly doing things that are new that couldn't really be done before, like the Chat GPTs of the world that are like, there isn't even a real alternative to this. Like this is a brand new thing. So I think the companies that are really going to rock it to the next level aren't just doing those 2 back and forth strategies. They're actually going to be providing something brand new that never existed.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. So I'm ready to move on to our rapid fire round.
All right.
Yeah. So less is more or less is bore?
Less is more, less is more, did you say?
Yeah.
I love that. As a product marketer, I would say less is more. Lead with the most compelling things, cut everything else out. People's attention is so small as it is today. And so we use an analogy where we say, like, if you're a restaurant, usually you have a best-selling item, and that's what you tell people. You got to go to this restaurant to try the best-selling item, rather than being like, you got to go to this restaurant. They have a million items that are good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. What is the worst example of very bad messaging?
I was going to say I'm maybe not going to name names, but I actually think I will. I think you should check out the ServiceNow page on their homepage, or listen. They run ads on the Wall Street Journal podcast.
Yeah,
they are so funny. It's like, I don't know how someone can fill so much space without saying anything at all. So that's a good one you could probably look at. And I don't feel bad making fun of them. They're like a multi-billion-dollar, publicly traded company.
Okay, so give me an example of a good example of the perfect messaging.
This is a very niche example, but there's a guy who does landing page roasts where he creates videos where he just points out the bad things about your landing page, and it's called Roast My Landing Page. And the website is so unbelievably clear, exactly what you're getting, exactly why you want it, the value, how it works. You read that page and you know exactly every single one of those elements I mentioned before, and you really have no questions, and it's pretty compelling.
Definitely gonna check it out. And the very last from my side, if you met a 10-year-old Anthony, what would you tell him?
Man, I would say, there's a lot of things I would say, but I would probably say, a lot of the stuff that you care about, you're not going to care about in 20 years. And I'd probably try to point them in the direction. I would say get into tech earlier in your life so you can have a little bit of leg up. I discovered tech late in life, and I love it. And I wish I had found it sooner.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much. Well, that would be it from my side. Thank you, Anthony, for joining our interviews. Thanks for your time.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.